Welcome to the She Wins podcast. I am your host, Alisa Devine, award-winning and best-selling author. When one woman tells her story, it inspires more women to do the same. Domestic violence thrives in secrecy. So to eliminate it, we tell our stories, we open the conversations, and we identify changes to be made. And that is what we are doing here today. Welcome, Renee, to the She Wins podcast. I'm so excited to get to talk with you today. And we've been able to talk quite a bit. And we got to attend a domestic violence fundraiser last week together. So we had a really good conversation that I want to bring back up again today to talk about what your strengths are and how we can promote change, within our community because we are in the same area, but also help other people to see where changes need to be made within the system. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and where you felt that maybe you were disadvantaged when you decided to leave and you were on your own as a single mom. So tell us a little bit about that, and then we can see how you made huge strides in that area.
Sure. So when my daughter was young, she was just a baby, and I was laid off from GM Powertrain. So I went from making quite a bit of money to living on unemployment. And I was desperately searching for another career opportunity. I found myself going back to college and helping myself through navigate through that post-secondary craziness. I signed up for assistance through the state to help with feeding my daughter and cash assistance and that sort of thing, medical coverage. Since I didn't have a job, I couldn't provide that through my employment. And I had never experienced any of these systems or care before. I'm very thankful that they were there, but because I experienced them, I recognized ways that maybe we could improve upon them to make them a little easier for people to access. So regarding cash assistance and food stamps and Medicaid, of course, there's the stigma, that people are taking advantage of the system. And I noticed that I was treated differently in those circles than the general public. But I also noticed, because I was striving to better myself and better the life that I gave my daughter, it wasn't something I was looking to live on that I heard so many people talk about. So I was going to college, and I noticed that if I made too much money, all of these financial contributions, food stamps, medical coverage would go away if I made even just a couple of dollars too much according to what their standards were. And neither of them were enough to live on. So somehow I just figured out through my experience that if I attended college and attained a job, which is called work study, so the university paid me to work and gain experience in my profession that I was learning in college, that money didn't count as income. And so since it didn't count as income, I could then make that little bit of money to help pay for bills while still getting that coverage, the medical coverage and the items that my daughter needed to be a healthy child. So thank God I somehow stumbled upon that. Otherwise, I'm not sure how we would have gotten over that bridge from, the poverty side of things to self-sufficiency.
That's amazing. Do you know if there's still a work study program like that today?
Yes, so that's one of the things that I do in my career is assist students and adults figure out how to gain a viable career. And when I speak to the Women's Center or the YWCA, that's something that I share with all of those women is if that is in your future plan to get some type of post-secondary education, definitely look into the possibility of work study. And it has, I know, just from following these women, that it has changed their lives because it's given them the ability to make money, to gain that experience that they need, to get a viable job, but then also be able to live. You know, we all need to eat and go to the doctor, and so it
Right.
provides those things.
Right. And I really like how you say that you knew that it was something temporary, getting that assistance. And so I think that it would be difficult to do so, and maybe a fear of thinking, am I going to be able to go off of that one day and be independent on my own? Because I know from the women I've worked with, I've talked with, the statistics, finances are a huge concern. I mean, especially for women. And then you add in minority women, and then you add in women without education. And it is a major concern and it can often keep them stuck in toxic relationships. So I think that's so important to think of it as a transition and know that you're going on to create something bigger and better and to use that assistance.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, people only know what they know. So again, because I walked through that situation and I stumbled upon that one valuable piece of information that made a huge difference in my life. Now I'm able to, change the way we, create awareness and share it with other people so they can benefit from it as well.
So how do you do that, create the awareness and let other people know? What is your job position right now and what do you do within the community?
So I have somewhat of a newer position right now. I work at the Bay Aranac ISD as a career navigator. So I assist students at our local districts figure out what their skills and their talents are and how that can relate to post-secondary education and a career. So my hope there is that, I just imagine what would have changed if I would have known back then that I had skills and talents that I could use to become something sooner than I did. So I'm hoping that by providing these resources to the students earlier on, then maybe that prevents them from, getting into these abusive relationships on the front end. And then my previous job, I started the College and Career Resource Center, and there I had even more of an opportunity to help with college and career post-secondary. When I say college and career, I mean anything related to post-secondary. So skilled trades, apprenticeships, anything, any type of training that leads to a career so that people can take care of themselves and their families. But I really like the ability to work with adults, especially. So I go into the Women's Center, the YWCA, even parole meetings, anywhere I can find a group of people who might benefit from hearing they do have skills and talents, whether they know that or not. They can capitalize on those and get some type of training so then they can take care of themselves and they don't have to stay in some situation that is unhealthy. So basically I look for any opportunity to speak with a group of people just to give those resources and encouragement.
Right. And that is so key. It's important. And, I want to add too that you were the first person in your family to also graduate from high school. So I think, you completely identify with not maybe realizing, of your talents and your worth and your confidence at a young age. And, having those resources and being able to make money and provide for yourself or provide for your family, that is such a confidence booster. And it also, helps to feel worthiness too, that you can contribute to society, to your family, to yourself, to your um, evolution as a human being. And so, like, what do you see when when you're working with people in helping them identify what their strengths are and what they can do, and that maybe spark that happens?
Well, it's definitely a satisfying job because, because I experienced it myself. I think it brings a whole other level of passion and excitement to see other people experience it. But, one of the ways I worked with the friend of the court, because again, I experienced some situations with the friend of the court. I was a single mom and I never received child support. And so I knew that in my particular situation, her father just didn't pay, and they let him get away with it. I've heard many stories of other parents who didn't get away with it. So I'm not exactly sure what the process is behind the scenes, but for us, that's the way it was. And so through my years of building a relationship with Friend of the Court, we were able to implement a program that they called Goals. And so instead of, people getting away with not paying child support because they don't have the means to pay for it, they referred those individuals to my college and career resource center. And I was able to sit down with them and talk about what kind of jobs were available in the area, what their skills and talents were. I helped them go through an assessment to determine what would work for them. And many times when they saw the Great Lakes Bay job outlook and all of the different opportunities out there with such short of a training, something that was realistic for them to accomplish.
Right.
They just, like you said, their face lit up, and it was like they instantly gained some new hope that they didn't have before.
Right.
And so not only does it change that person's life because it gives them confidence, it gives them the ability to contribute, to take care of their children, but it affects everyone around them, the other parents who then is getting child support, the children who are being financially cared for. Education just opens so many doors for that person as well as their family and friends. So it's amazing to see the changes that can happen just by providing information, resources, and encouragement to someone.
Yeah, and it feels like a full circle for sure because, like, tell us a little bit about the people that came into your life when you were in the process. You had people encourage you to keep going and not only were you the first person to graduate from high school in your family, but how many degrees do you have? Like, tell us about that process.
Sure. So, when my daughter came into the world, I had this huge urgency to provide her with the life that she deserved. And so I made a promise. Prior to that, I went to Delta College classes here and there, but I never really, I didn't know what I was good at or what I wanted to do. So I never really finished anything. And so when my daughter was born, I promised myself that I was going to go back to school and I wasn't going to stop until I had a degree. Well, I didn't stop at a degree. So, I saw a commercial, which sounds silly, but I saw a commercial for medical billing and coding. But for me, that's what I needed to hear, because again, going back to what I shared with, those people through the front of the court, is I saw something that seemed realistic to me, not, going for my master's degree and going to college for 10 years and not being able to gain a job, for 20 years, but it was something attainable and realistic for me. So I went to get a medical billing and coding certificate, which I did end up getting, but thank goodness my advisor saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And she knew that, sure, it would pay my bills, but it wasn't going to, that wasn't my passion. And so she pretty much begged the local Sure. So I was very thankful for my college advisor, who went out on a limb, saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and fought for that work study position at our local community foundation, which was out of the ordinary. Usually work study positions are in whatever major you're going into. So that would have been medical billing and coding for me at that time. But again, I thought she was crazy, because at that time I was making steps in the right direction, but I didn't feel like I was in a place where I could help people. But she knew that that's where I would come alive. And so I got that position as a work study at the Bay Area Community Foundation, and I didn't even know, what a nonprofit was, or, what these organizations did. And so I was amazed when I realized these organizations existed solely to help people and help advance the community. And so I really thrived there, and was there for 15 years. So not only did I get that experience through the work study program, but it also turned into my full-time career. So we all need those positive people in our life who can see something beyond our mess that we see in the moment, to kind of speak life into us. And so I'm very thankful for those people who did that for me and continue to. And so I want to be that for other people as much as possible.
I could not agree with you more. And, I think back to, like, on my journey too, and there's always been like the helpers that showed up, and there's always been people like to kind of guide me to the next level and the next level, and to keep going and to provide that encouragement and insight. And I think the thing is, like, when we're talking about domestic violence, when we're talking about women who've been abused, it's important to mention that for probably however long the abusive relationship lasted, there's been so much secrecy and isolation, and not talking about what's going on. And so I think the most important thing for women to know and to realize and to be aware of is that there are helpers. And it is our job to be able to recognize them and receive that help and to accept it, because that can make all of the difference. And so often, women who've been abused want to, stay withdrawn and keep to themselves. And when you do that, you're missing out on how much, your life can change and grow and move beyond. Did you ever feel like that? Did you ever feel like maybe, you held back at all from receiving help, or were you just ready for that opening, that next step?
I feel like there was resistance along the way, for sure. It was a process of being able to even sharing my story. So as I met with individuals through the College and Career Resource Center, encouraging them to learn about themselves, to, gain that post-secondary education, to do all of these things. Of course, looking back now, I can see that did make a positive difference. But then after a few years in, I realized that if I were to share a little bit about myself, um, people were more open to receiving what I had to offer.
Mm.
So even though for some time, I would, at the beginning, I maybe told my chiropractor because I needed some physical help, and couldn't explain, what was going on physically. So I think she was maybe one of the first people that I told, and it kind of was like a weight off of my shoulders, and it felt good to tell someone, and then for that person to be supportive and not judge. And so I'm glad that I had that positive experience, because then as I, went through the healing process myself and gained more confidence, I realized I don't need to be ashamed of what happened, and I don't need to be withdrawn anymore. But I could actually share and make a bigger difference then, because now when I share, people feel comfortable about opening up. And sure, I was able to help without, knowing those details. But I feel like the more we share with each other in safe places,
Right.
we're able to help more specifically with what that person might need to hear, I guess. So I can look and notice all of my helpers, and even looking back, I could see where some people might have thought a little more was going on, but maybe I wasn't sharing. And then just kind of wonder, I wonder if they would have been able to help even more if I would have been more forthcoming with, the whole truth instead of bits and pieces. But I think that's a process, a process for you to as you're healing, and then also to be healthy enough to decide, is this a healthy person that I should share with, or not, because not all people are safe. So
Right. And I think, if someone, just to kind of bring a little bit of awareness to this, if someone is hearing a person's story of abuse, it's always important to remember to, listen in a non-judgmental way, because that can also make the difference. If, someone's talking about their experience or their story or a situation and there's judgment involved, they're not likely to share that, especially with that person again.
sure.
So the more, it can be done in a loving environment, without judgment, that's key. And I think I've noticed, such a change in you. And so, I think that by starting to share your story, it's not like all of a sudden one day you share your whole story and everything goes away. I've went through a process, you've went through a process. It starts with sharing pieces of it, maybe certain events or, memories, and then you're able to kind of, add the whole history to it and put it together like that. But tell me, because I know what I see in you, but tell me what it's like to be where you're at, where, you're publishing your story and She Wins Too, which is coming out this summer. How do you feel now that you're, you're through the process of telling your story and sharing it in a way that has been, really changing, life changing, and what has been developing through that?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So just this morning, I remembered, I did have part of my story shared in a book about 10 years ago. And it was just, it was a book to encourage adults to gain education. So it fit with what I was doing at the time. And it was just a, very short 2 pages. And I shared a little bit of education, and my inspiration was my daughter, of course. And then fast forwarding to, a little over 10 years later, in between then and now was all of that stuff, realizing that I could share bits and pieces of my story with individuals I was working with, and then maybe in group settings, at certain organizations, and leading up to, I really feel like you and I were brought together at the right time for a purpose, because I have always had this want to share more or to do more, I guess. So my favorite Bible verse is Romans 8:28, and it talks about how God can make good come from all things. And when I realized that, my daughter also encouraged me, before she could speak, that I should seek out faith as well. And so when I realized that, what that verse meant to me was telling my testimony and helping others to overcome those things, was very crazy for me to realize that all of that hell that I had been through, something good could actually come from it. I know that you and I can connect on another level that maybe someone else who hasn't been through abuse, you just have an understanding, you're able to relate. People just feel safer, I guess, with you because you have that knowledge and experience and understanding. So when the opportunity came about to write my story, of course, I was scared and excited at the same time. And the process was not easy by any means, but I do believe that it allowed me to go that much further in my healing process. So it felt like I was able to just, kind of dump it all out and kind of release it. So I feel like it was healing for me, but then also, once it's published in the pages, it can be encouragement for other women to, prevent them from getting into those situations because they notice the red flags, or to encourage them to get out and stay out. So I've loved the process, and it's been, it helps you remember certain things that maybe when you've experienced trauma, sometimes your brain just tucks things away because it's too much to handle. So I feel like it brings you another step further in the process of healing, because I think it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah. It's kind of like peeling away the layers and like, okay, is there something else I need to like look at or correct? It's an opportunity to for cleansing and clearing and getting anything else that's in the way, like out of the way. And I think too, it has helped you to like uncover your strengths as well. Like we had the conversation last week about, you have the ability with your work to speak up and to help identify within the systems of areas that need improvement.
Sure.
Right. And so let's talk about, like, that is bringing me to the piece I want to talk about more with the friend of the court, is that, I feel like we were connected even, before we realized, but tell us about when you were going through the situation with your ex and you were forced to communicate in a situation that was unhealthy.
Sure. So of course, in any situation where the parents aren't together, the friend of the court gets involved, and we needed to speak together with a mediator to kind of come to an understanding of parenting time. My daughter was just a baby at this time, and I was not comfortable sitting across from my ex in a room, verbally speaking out, saying, I don't feel my daughter is safe with him. So if you know anything about abuse or abusers, they do not like it when they are called out or confronted, or especially, coming from me. And so, I can smile about it now, but it was a devastating time for sure. And as a mother, just trying to desperately keep their child safe, it's a serious issue. And so I called the friend of the court, and I let the person um, who answered the phone. I let her know that I did not feel safe. I asked if there was anything else that we could do, if I could come in early and talk to the moderator beforehand, if there was anything in place that could possibly protect me. And she said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to talk to them when you get here. And you can write a letter if you'd like, but you probably won't get a response for 30 days or something crazy like that.
Right. And can we just say that that is a very frustrating piece about the friend of the court? And I don't know if that's across the board, in every county, the friend of the court has that kind of structure in place, but it's difficult to talk to someone on the phone,
Sure.
right? And I don't know if it's because they're understaffed or they get so many, commentary questions, things like that, but it is definitely a frustrating piece when you're looking for help regarding your children.
Yeah, that's kind of a serious matter.
Right.
And so and of course they tell you all the time, if you don't show up, you're in contempt of court and whatever. So I was scared out of my mind. But I was trying, at that point, I had some resources because of my education and professional experience. So I reached out to a couple of people. Thank goodness this lawyer, because again, I was a single mom making very little money on work study. So I didn't have money for a lawyer. And usually with any of these things, if you need a lawyer in order to get anywhere. And so this lawyer said what you need to do, because he has a drug background. He's been in the system, addiction, all of that. What you need to do is ask for random drug tests and even offer to pay for them. And I was very scared to do that, but I was thankful that I had that person tell me that's what I needed to do, because I would have had no idea. Again, we need to share so that other people can reap the benefits of, pieces of information.
Another helper that came in.
Sure. And so I remember clear as day sitting across the table from him with the mediator sitting to my left. The mediator was very cold to me. I understand that they have tough jobs and maybe see certain types of people in there. I don't know what the reasoning was, but he made me feel like a bad mom for not letting a father see his daughter. I tried to explain, I had a stack of paper because I was told before, make sure you write everything down. You date it, explain it, who was there. And I had pages upon pages. He said that didn't matter, that he hadn't been in legal trouble in 6 months. That just meant he hadn't gotten caught in 6 months. And let's be honest, 6 months isn't that long of a time to be out of legal trouble.
Right.
So I said the words, she is not safe with him, and I am requesting random drug tests that I will pay for. And the look on his face, like I can, just talking about it, I can feel what I felt in that room that day. And it was awful. But it was exactly what I needed to say. And so I was able to keep my daughter safe because, of course, he refused to do the drug tests, which meant he, couldn't see her. One thing I forgot to mention.
Right, too. That
Yeah.
says a lot, refusing to do it. And I just want to say that you are so brave to do that because, you took it to another level, really, and by standing up for yourself and your daughter. And yes, it is scary to be direct and upfront like that, and you did it anyways.
Yeah, I had to protect my daughter, and so but I want to mention one thing before we got to that point. He was saying, because I was trying to do whatever I could to not have to say that. But the mediator said, he can see her, every other weekend or whatever he was saying. And so I just asked, so what do I do if I sense it's not a safe situation? I could go into addiction and the things that happen. And so he said, well, if he's under the influence, you don't have to leave her with him. And I said, oh, okay, because I could tell. And so I reiterated, so if he's under the influence, I don't have to leave her, even though it states that in the order. And he said, well, you'll have to prove it. In other words, I would
your job to prove it.
Yeah. So I would have to ask him to pee in a cup, or, it just didn't make any sense whatsoever. And it was like I was the one on trial there when I was only trying to protect my daughter against physical and emotional harm.
Right.
So frustrating.
Right.
And so, so then, obviously it didn't go well. We were in there forever. And so finally I said, this is what I need. He got upset. We ended up leaving. Well, I ended up with he called me multiple times, threatened to kill me. And my daughter and I weren't safe, so we stayed with my parents for a couple of weeks. I tried to reach out to the police, and they said that the recording I had on my phone with his voice from his cell phone number threatening to kill me was hearsay.
I don't get that. How is that hearsay? How is that not proof? How can they not track his number?
Right. It wasn't hearsay. They obviously didn't know what hearsay means. And so
how many years ago this was, Renee?
About 15.
Okay. So what did you do to get through that time? And then tell us what you were able to do years later, because that's really significant.
Yes. So it was a battle daily, just to try and figure out how to keep us safe when the organizations put in place by state and government were not helping, actually making things worse. So I would, stay at my parents if I had to. I saved up to put an alarm system in the house. I tried to appease what he wanted so that he would leave us alone. I ended up, another, friend of the court, I feel like could have helped me in that. I was very low income trying to take care of my daughter on my own. I ended up signing off child support for him so that he could leave. I mean, ultimately, that's what kept us safe. That's what made him move on, because he could have his money for his partying or whatever he wanted it for, as long as I could just have my daughter and be okay.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it wasn't easy. It was very, very hard. I worked for a nonprofit, so I didn't make much money, and I was the only one caring for her. So it would have been nice if there would have been something put into place to help me get some sort of financial assistance. But anyway, I got what I wanted. I was able to keep her safe. So that was my main concern. So of course, each time something happened, like with the friend of the court or the police, or, just things that happened that I thought, why isn't there people to help me? Like, why? I just didn't understand how what was happening. But I kept doing what I knew, going to school, working, taking care of her the best I could, trying to make those proper steps. And throughout those 10 years of gaining respect in the community, from leading the College and Career Resource Center, building a relationship with the Friend of the Court director, creating that goals program, and me providing a service free of charge to them, helped them reach their numbers, helped them get the child support that they needed. I was, instead of right away going in and demanding someone do something while I was emotional, and it would have been self-serving because we were going through the courts at that time. I can say this now, but during that time I was angry and I wanted to scream and I wanted to make change then. But I realize now I needed to be patient and I needed to build respect and relationship with that institution. And over the years, that's exactly what I did. And then God opened a door for me to sit down with the director, which I am so thankful for her. We sat in her office and she listened, and I told her every um, awful detail of the story. And I remember exactly how she was sitting and her head was hung and she just kept shaking her head, talking about changing systems. I just went through a diversity and equity training, and they talk about, who do you have sitting at your table? Who's making the rules? Who's making the process? Who's making these decisions? And are they the people that are affected by that? Because if you don't know, you don't know. And
Right.
so this woman had, a huge heart. I believe she shed some tears, and I could feel that she was genuinely concerned with what had happened to me and possibly what could be happening to other people, because these, processes need to change. So I went in there knowing, this is far removed from me now. I'm not in the system. We're not in the system. We are good. I am here now to advocate for the people who follow me, because I could get choked up just thinking about it, because it just makes so much of a difference if we're able to experience something, recognize how it can change to become better, and then partner with those who have the ability and the leadership to make that change is just amazing. And so I went in there with a bulleted list of ideas of how they could make change and keep women and children safe that wouldn't cost time or money. Because I'm sorry, but I hate it when people say, we just don't have the time or we don't have the resources. Figure out how to make it happen. We're talking about people's lives and innocent children. So if you can't do it right, you need to be out of the business completely. I'm sorry, I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
So I gave her a bulleted list of 10 items because, again, I didn't want to make it too overwhelming. But here are 10 bulleted items that you can change immediately that would not cost time or money and potentially save the life of someone, or prevent them living in torture for years. And she worked with me, and I knew that they made a couple of those small changes. But when you shared with me the huge change that you experienced most recently, I realized, it might have taken 10 years for God to work out that plan of finally meeting with the director there. But change is still happening, because hopefully she has that story in her head and that day in her office with every choice and decision that they make from here on out. I even asked if I could speak with one of my bulleted points was I wanted to speak with those mediators. I wanted them to know. And the gentleman who was my mediator was in that room, and I never once called him out, but I know he knew it was him.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think, that's exactly how we create change, is by speaking up. And kudos to you for doing that, because I just want to add that when, I went through a custody trial in 2013, 14, somewhere around there, many years ago, I did not have, the domestic violence screening in place, and it was not recognized as domestic violence. And so, fast forward to 2021, with the custody motion that I filed, I received a domestic violence screening form to fill out prior to the mediation. And so, we were talking about that on another Zoom one time and realized that you had put that piece in place for me. I mean, not just for me, you didn't, we didn't realize that, but you helped to benefit and I got to get the benefits from it, or you helped propel that forward. So, I think we need to point out like how those dots get connected and how, by speaking up, there are real people on the other side. Maybe it's not immediately, it could take time for all of that to get rearranged, but there are people that benefit from it.
Absolutely. And people only know what they know. So, I could be angry at that director for years and years to come that, change didn't take place. Or I could realize she's a human with a heart, but she just never experienced it. So how would she know that these things need to take place unless someone who had experienced it reached out to her? So
right. And it can so often feel like overwhelming. Like, what good is it even going to do if I say anything? Like, it's not going to change. Right. Mm-hmm. But you, like, to me, like, your story is just like the epitome of faith, because you've made those changes, even if, at the time they felt small, or it felt like there was still so much yet to do. But I feel like you just, throughout your story and your life and your experience, you kept holding the faith that it was going to get better, even when it didn't look like it, even when it didn't feel like it. And like, that's what faith is. You can't always see it. It's not always tangible, and you keep moving along anyways, standing up for yourself and doing what you feel is right in your heart and your soul. Yeah. And that's like, kudos to you. I mean, and I'm just going to end it right there, because I just feel like, that's your story, and that's, what real faith is. And so, if you're listening and you feel like maybe it seems like too big of a mountain to climb, to keep putting those little pieces out there, just that one step forward, and hold on to that faith, like Renee did. Hold on to that faith that something will change, that it will get better, that you will see the benefits, or some other woman will see the benefits from your speaking up in the actions that you take. Thanks so much for participating in the #SheWins conversation today. If you have questions you'd like me to answer on a future podcast, or if you're looking for advice, or if you're ready to tell your story, email info@alisadivine.com.